Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. I received many interesting questions after the last Q&A video. Thank you for all. I really appreciate your input. Let's take a quick look at the questions for today. First, Tracy Stephens, Bagua versus Ba Gua. Second, Itsfairgame, Chinese martial art and Chinese opera. Third, DrMARDOC, Han Muxia. Fourth, ONEDIRECTION, fist strikes in internal styles. Fifth, Frederic Godin, Tai Chi sparring and reliance on techniques. Sixth, from Frederic Godin, martial symmetry and left-right balance. Seventh, Frederic Godin, best service for practice. Sixth, from Sebas, Xing 5 elements practice order. Ninth, from Thomas Hudecsek, mind-body symmetry during defense. 10th, Alex Navarro, self-cultivation goals. 11th, Tai Chi International, internal style and maturity. 12th, from FREDTalk, learning in later years. And 13th, from Sebas, Gong Li in old age. 14th, from Minal, practice in the snow. And the last one, 15th, from DrMARDOC, commercialization and fraudulence in traditional martial arts. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, the first question is from Tracy Stephens, asks, would you be so kind to explain the difference, if any, between Ba Gua and Ba Gua? I have searched for videos and text mediums and found nothing. Your help is appreciated. Well, short answer, no difference. Now, let me explain. This is actually a language-related question. Ba Gua and Ba Gua are the same. Ba Gua is the pronunciation in Cantonese, while Ba Gua is the pronunciation in Mandarin. Before the 1980s, most of the Chinese martial art terms were translated into English from Chinese based on the Cantonese pronunciation. This was mostly on account of migration from the Canton area to the west more than 100 years ago. After the 1980s, especially from 1990s, many people from mainland China, including myself, started teaching martial art in the West. Because of this, Mandarin now is gaining popularity as well. By the way, Cantonese and Mandarin used the same script, but they have a different accent. Mandarin-based dialects are spoken by about 72% of the population, while Cantonese-based dialects are spoken by about 5%, and the rest of the population speaks other dialects. So, it doesn't matter if you learn Ba Gua or Ba Gua, as long as you find a good teacher. I hope that answers your question, Tracy. Okay, let's look at the next question. Itsfairgame asks, I have a question, well, two actually. First, can you discuss the intersection of Chinese martial art and Chinese opera and theater? Are there any insights for Westerners to learn by studying Chinese theater? Second, a Chinese colleague of mine said that each village developed a martial style of their own for self-defense before the modern era. Well, interesting question indeed. To your first question, I learned Beijing opera while I was a child. I even participated in 2 opera events on TV while I was a teenager. Later on, during my early days in Canada, the Chinese Community Center in Montreal used to invite me to sing Beijing opera for major festivals. But since then, I have been practicing less and less, and as a result, I cannot sing as well as before. From the last 10 years, I have only been listening to opera once or twice a week on YouTube, and my family doesn't want me to sing it because they think it's too noisy. I think I'm the only cultured member in my family. Anyway, suffice it to say that I know both Chinese martial arts and Chinese opera very well, and I'm qualified to answer your question. To be very straightforward, the martial art movements used in opera have been changed in order to appeal to its audience. It is almost useless in terms of self-defense. It isn't too far removed from what you see in most Kung Fu movies. So, if your primary focus is martial art, Chinese opera will provide zero benefit toward it. To your second question about every village developing its own martial art style, I have to say it is true. However, most of those martial art styles were very primitive. Only some of them evolved enough to be considered well-developed styles. My opinion about martial art practice is that we should focus on major styles that have been tested before in terms of effectiveness and efficiency. Of course, it is not a bad idea to investigate old or uncommon styles if you want to study martial history. By the way, I have traveled to many cities in China in order to meet different martial artists. I realized that it was a very valuable investment back then. But I did not invest my time and energy to visit many rural areas to see different styles. To the best of my knowledge, most reputable martial art practitioners have moved to big cities. In some other cases, a few former villages have effectively turned into small cities due to the popularity of their styles. Chen's village is the primary example of this phenomenon. Tai Chi has become a major economic driving force in that area. If you have been there, I'm sure you will agree. Hope that answers your questions. Okay, next question. Dr. MARDOC asks, we would be most thankful for your insight and elucidation of the great Han Muxia and his history, lineage, training and disciples, as well as victory over the Russian boxer. Many respectful thanks. Well, this is a big topic. If you haven't heard the name before, Han Muxia was a great Xing master. He was very well known in the Xing community in Tianjin. He studied Xing and Ba Gua with Zhang Zhaodong. His name even became more popular since he taught Zhou Enlai Xing when Zhou Enlai was the student in Tianjin. If you are not aware, Zhou Enlai was the first Prime Minister of the People's Republic of China under Mao Zedong. Han Muxia became very popular in the Tianjin martial art community before the 1920s. As for the story of him fighting a Russian boxer, that happened in Liuguo Fandian, or Six Country Hotel in Beijing. With his teacher Zhang Zhaodong, Han Muxia went to Beijing to fight with the Russian boxer. Once, he claimed to practice Fan Ba Gua or counter Ba Gua with Ying Tianwen, who was considered a Kung Fu brother of Dong Haichuan in Jiuhua Shan or Jiuhua Mountain. This implied Han Muxia would now be considered the same generation as Zhang Zhaodong, since Zhang Zhaodong was a student of Dong Haichuan. After hearing this, Zhang Zhaodong had a fight with his own students, Han Muxia, in which Zhang Zhaodong struck Han's chest. Han Muxia vomited blood caused by the internal injury afflicted by Zhang Zhaodong. This is a very well-known story in Tianjin. My grandfather told me the same. Let me give you a quick introduction to Fan Bagua or Counter Bagua. It is considered as a Bagua that is more advanced than other styles of Bagua. By the way, there is also a major style of Bagua called Fan Bagua. Fan here is the family name in the second tone, the Fan in Counter Bagua, which is the different character and pronunciations, the third tone. A totally different character. This will be clear to Mandarin speakers but won't make any sense to English speakers. Instead, for English speaker, I will simply use Fan style Bagua to mean Bagua from the Fan family, and the Counter Bagua, I will simply use the Counter Bagua. I also know Du Yunsheng, the son of Han Muxia's last disciple, Du Shaoxiang, in Tianjin. He shared many stories about Han Muxia with me. He also gave me a demonstration of a Counter Bagua. I actually found it to be just another variation of Zhang Zhaodong's Xing Bagua palm. I may talk about Han Muxia in more detail in a future video, but hope this suffices for now. Okay, let's look at the next question. ONEDIRECTION asks, it would appear that the internal style used fist very little. Palm strikes are apparently of much higher striking value. Why is this? I do recognize that open palm training is necessary for qi development in the palm. However, since striking with the fist is occasionally used, there is a certain value placed on the closed fist for striking. Please comment on the pros and cons or different aspects of palm strikes versus fist strikes. Great, thank you for your question. Actually, it depends on the style. For example, in Xing, the fists are used for most of the time. In Tai Chi, especially Chen style Tai Chi, most of the major strikes applies fist. Bagua is different since its major weapon is the open palm. However, what makes Bagua different is its stepping pattern and body movements. I have mentioned in a prior video before that the major differences between palm strike and the fist strike is that palm strikes mainly focus on a hard area, while fist strike mostly targeted a soft area. This is the research result I discovered through years of practice. It is worth noting that Bagua applies palm strikes since its unique body movement works better with open palms. Most of Bagua styles need to have a very flexible body structure dynamically in combat. An open palm is very flexible compared to a closed fist and hence ideal for coordination with Bagua's circular body motion. Xing is different. In Xing, the movement of the hands is guided by the concept of qi zuan luo fan, or move upward with drilling power, move downward with crushing and turning power. Closed fists are much better suited for this function compared to open palms. This is why Xing practitioners mostly use closed fist instead of palm in combat. Now, let's consider Tai Chi. Tai Chi consists of many locking techniques or qinna. This is why Tai Chi uses open palms in many situations. However, if you consider Chen style specifically, most of the strong and powerful strikes use closed fist, and not open palms. I hope I have answered your question. Time for the next question. Frederic Godin asked 3 questions. I'd like to answer them one by one. Question 1. In Tai Chi, are people famous for fighting relying equally on all classes of techniques, such as striking, punching, pulling, takedowns, locking? Or are these classes of techniques more prevalent in the context of self-defense? Well, in my opinion, people should use whatever necessary in a self-defense situation in terms of techniques. In addition, they should also be able to gauge and modify their approach based on the skill level of their opponents. For example, I do not consider locking to be a good approach against skilled opponents. I would rather prefer striking against them. However, the right approach to training involves the full range of techniques. If you recall my Tai Chi introduction video, I introduced the Tai Chi 8 energies, which can be applied as the foundation for the techniques that you just mentioned. Furthermore, developing a technique that can be used subconsciously is considered the ultimate practice goal in practice to most practitioners. Again, starting from intentional practice and eventually evolving to instinctive skill, which when applying techniques in a self-defense situation is the path. Fred's second question. You have spoken about symmetry last week. To what extent should a practitioner attempt to balance skills on both sides? Doing single movements on both sides, but doing routines on a single side. Even though the concept of the symmetry which I introduced in my prior video is not very relevant to the approach of practicing both sides, it is still a great question. My answer for it is that it is necessary to practice both sides in any style, no matter what the routine emphasizes. Bear in mind that any routine in style is developed from a combination of single movements. In other words, any system focuses on single movements in the beginning. Only at a certain point that routines or combination of different single movements became popular for teaching and training purposes. And even today, many styles still continue to focus exclusively on single movements. So, to summarize, it is an excellent idea to practice both sides, especially Tai Chi, but it is not related to martial symmetry. Fred's question 3 about the ground soil on which top to practice. What is preferable? For instance, when I practice in the park, the floor is made of gravel, and due to the softer floor, I feel movement are a bit less snappy than when performed on a harder floor. However, perhaps this harder floor is hard on knees. Okay, in my opinion, we should be able to practice on different surfaces. Personally, I prefer to practice on a slippery surface so that I can practice my stability more. In China, normally people practice in parks, and most of the time they practice on cement paved surfaces. Of course, a harder floor is not good for the knees long term. So one solution is to use the hips more instead of depending on stepping. By doing so, not only can you protect your knees, but also help improve dantian power. Fred, I hope I have answered your question. Thank you. For the next question, Sebas asks, Is it necessary to practice the elements in a cyclical order? I have read from many sources that it states it can be damaging to one's health, and the practice should one practice in a randomized order. From a martial perspective, I found that this doesn't make any sense, but I might be wrong. Well, short answer, no, not at all. There's no such order in Xing Yi 5 elements in the first place. The founder, Li Luoneng, named it based on the application and the nature of the power generated by these 5 movements. If you do not believe it, let me ask you another question. Xing Yi 5 elements were derived from the 3 fists of Dai family Xin Yi. There were only 3 movements or 3 basic powers in the beginning, and the Dai family Xin Yi masters did not get sick or die because of their practice. So please do not believe such statements. They just unnecessarily complicate simple things. Tao is not far from us, but we often unnecessarily distance ourselves from it. Good practice is simple, easy, effective. So you do not have to follow any such order, and the change in order doesn't have any adverse effect on your health. So to summarize, Sebas, you are right and they are wrong. Feel free to follow this video to anyone who disagrees. Hope that helps. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Mr. Thomas Hudecsek asks, there is one thing I didn't understand fully. Maybe you could explain this another time in more detail. The symmetry between mind and body movements in a defensive motion. While the arms move closer to the body, the mind extends. I thought you pull your attention and the energy inside to store before releasing again. This is a great question. The coordination between the mind and the body movements may not be in the same direction. In other words, what should your mind do when your arms move inward? Well, to put this in different words, mind lead action. During a defensive motion, when you pull the opponent, the intention is not to pull their force toward us, but instead to send our force to the opponent's body while pulling them inward. This magnifies the impact of your force release. This is an advanced skill and requires a lot of practice. Today, I'm sharing this with all of you, and I hope you will try it. Again, mind-body coordination does not imply that the mind and the body movement are always directionally aligned. The key is to focus on the final effect of the movement, not the physical movement itself. Of course, easier said than done. It is an advanced topic, and you need to have years of training to master it. But the basic principle is very simple. So just give it a try and let me know what you feel. Hope that answers your question, Mr. Hudecsek. Let's move on to the next question. Alex Navarro asked a question about self-cultivation. He says, could you talk a little about the self-cultivation goals of internal arts? I don't mean to judge, but I see a lot of historic explanation out there in the community, and I imagine it might actually be something practical. For example, I wonder if it is something close to when you say your practice make your body like a book rather than explanation. That sounds like the fourth in Star Wars. An interesting question indeed. Thank you, Alex. First of all, let me clarify what I said about making my body like a book. I'd like to elaborate the context of that statement. A few years ago, a person in China made a false claim about Li Luoneng, the founder of Xing. He claimed that he had a secret Xing manual inherited from Li Luoneng's brother. Actually, he just simply hand-copied some old documents and added some other articles together, but claimed that the book was given by his grandfather. Many people in the community denounced his claim. Eventually, he admitted that he did not get the book from his family and had just made the whole thing up by himself. Before his admission of falsification, I talked about what a qualified martial artist should do in practice. I said that instead of relying on a book as evidence of a lineage or practice, your own practice should reflect the quality expected of your lineage. Anyone can put flowery words on paper, but that does not convey anything about the practice. A martial artist's body movement should be the content of a style put into practice, and likewise, body movement put into words should form a comprehensive book. So that is the context behind that statement. Regarding self-cultivation through practice, let me share my opinion of it. Self-cultivation, or 修身, is a Confucian concept, which means to elevate one's own standard of virtue and morality through practice. In Confucianism, self-cultivation, including both learning and self-directed learning, are the two main themes. Self-cultivation is aimed at morally transforming the learner's mind so that they can improve themselves in life. In Chinese culture, especially ancient Chinese culture, practice in any art, including martial art, was and still is considered a part of self-cultivation. You may consider it to be related to a belief system. In my opinion, it is more like related to finding a balanced way to becoming a more refined individual. It's hard to do justify to this topic in a Q&A video. I will talk about this in more detail in the future. Tai Chi International asks, I found great your opinion about strength weakness are related to training. I also have a question, why mainly the mature people embrace Tai Chi and are not attractive to the younger generation, in your opinion? First of all, Tai Chi International is a YouTube channel created by Sebastian Constantine. He lives in Montreal. He teaches Tai Chi and Qigong. Since we live in the same city, he visits me sometimes and we talk about the practice together. He is really devoted to Tai Chi and Qigong. He has his own YouTube channel. Link is in the description. To answer his question about mature people embracing Tai Chi, I think this is mainly caused by the current public perception of Tai Chi. Most people falsely believe that Tai Chi is for older people. This is the case even in China. Let me be clear. I'm aware that the word older here may not be politically correct, but I'm using people's words directly to express the sad and unfortunate phenomenon. However, at the same time, younger people who practice Tai Chi mostly are serious practitioners. Many of them chosen Tai Chi because of the value offered by the art and they understand it. I also believe that any good art only attracts a certain type of people. Think about music. Yes, most of us appreciate music. However, different styles of music attract different audiences, which is not surprising at all. Likewise, classical music has its own fan base. Not everyone can understand and appreciate classical music. FREDTalk asks, what makes the practitioner learn in later years and become a grandmaster versus many practitioners that can practice all their life and sometimes assiduously and yet not get closer to that level. Shaolin and Beijing have a courtyard filled with good level practitioners that intensely practice, for example. Well, I have to say that to become a good master, you have to meet certain conditions. For example, some internal factors such as body shape, personality, and attitude toward practice. External factors such as life experience, financial situation, relationships with others, family background, and so on. For example, I introduced in my prior video that traditionally there are many types of body shapes that are in a disadvantage in practicing internal styles. For example, the proportion of upper and lower body, thickness of one's chest and shoulder, strength of one's hips area, and so on. Luck is another external factor, which I believe to be very important if you are able to meet a good teacher. Then you could be considered lucky. But luck alone does not suffice. You also have to be persistent and consistent in your practice. In my 20s, I often used to get dreams of practicing martial arts with. Of course, I do not believe that those masters purposely taught me martial art in my dream, but rather my practice was a huge part of my life, even to the point that it seemed as if someone was helping me even in my dreams. Of course, I consider myself to be lucky since my grandfather was a great martial artist and I got to spend my childhood and youth learning from him. I was born and raised in the Hedong district of Tianjin, which was the hotbed of many famous martial artists. But being born and raised in a martial art family and living in Tianjin was not the reason for me to get dreams of studying martial arts from great teachers. Rather, it was because I devoted myself to it. My hard work created those dreams. So, to answer your question, there are many factors including both internal and external aspects. We need both to become a great martial artist. Sebas asks, previously you've brought up the differences between martial force Gong Li and Ben Li physical strength in your prior video, and having well-developed physical strength is a must for Fajin, especially when transferring force at the moment of impact. I have also come across a few videos where old, sometimes frail-looking masters, Chen Xiaowang being one of them, are still able to generate impressive amount of force in their Fajin despite being way past their physical prime. In fact, the level of explosiveness in their movement is superior to many modern fighters and even internal martial artists that are younger than them. Even today's Mike Tyson lacks the same level of explosiveness compared to his younger self. My question is, how are these masters still able to retain their Kung Fu despite being at an advanced age? Very good question. I have to be very straightforward with you. I believe that no matter how great the masters are, the intensity of their martial power decreases during their later years. Generally speaking, after the age of 70, Fajin ability rapidly decreases. But I have seen quite a few great martial artists who could demonstrate Fajin even in their 70s and after. But it was not at the same level of intensity as in their 50s. After observing many internal style practitioners, I can say that most of them reached their peak Fajin ability during their 50s. After their 50s, their fighting ability gradually declines. Also, since you mentioned Chen Xiaowang, let me tell you that his fighting was even more powerful in his 40s. No doubt, he is still very good in fighting, but no longer as powerful as in his 40s. Please keep in mind that fighting requires more than merely physical strength. More importantly, it requires timing, angle, speed, and experience. Older masters can practice fighting better in terms of experience, but as for the impact, it is almost impossible to be as powerful as in their 40 to 50s. Nomino asks, I have a question about your introduction on weather. I have seen Shifus doing demonstration as well as 站桩 in the snow. There are a certain number of examples like that. The Bagua Shifu I took courses from is doing 站桩 in the snow. I have Yichuan videos demonstrated in the park in the snow. Shaolin Shifus can do demos in the snow, etc. What is the internal principle behind doing that? What is the internal goal to be reached in being able to exercise in the snow, or it is just to show off? Well, I do not know their motivation for doing so. I will never do it since it is not healthy to stand outside in the heavy snow to practice. When I was a child, I had to practice outside regardless of the weather. Most people were very poor in China 40 years ago, including my own family. If you were not part of the government-sponsored professional wushu team, you could only practice outside for the most of the time, simply because there was not sufficient space indoors. That was the common living condition. It was not by choice. In Canada, it gets very cold during winter, and we have 5 to 6 months of heavy snow every year. It would be dangerous to practice outside. Back to the topic. I really do not know why they practice outside. If I were to guess, maybe they do not have a practice room, or maybe they prefer to practice alone and the snowy day might be a perfect time for them. Or maybe it adds to the artistic value of their demonstration. Who knows? And honestly, who cares? Suffice it to say, there's no such concept and theory to practice in the snow in the traditional Chinese styles. I think it's just their personal choice without any practical or martial training purpose. Maybe it's best you ask them instead. Hope that answers your question, Nomino. Okay, final question for today. DrMARDOC asks, may I know your thought about the contemporary traditional martial art community in China? I feel like there's too much commercialization and fraudulence. Most people, especially Westerners, when taught forms, aren't taught the meaning and application of it. That also happens globally and is affecting the reputation of traditional martial arts detrimentally. One last question. Well, this is not about the martial. Do you play any xiangqi? Okay, first of all, thank you for your question, DrMARDOC. To answer your first question, I think there is nothing wrong with commercialization of martial art teaching and practice. Without commercialization, efforts made during teaching by martial art teachers cannot be compensated. I think your main concern is the second word, fraudulence. I agree with you that it is the problem not only in China but globally as well, like you said. My opinion is that it is not peculiar to modern times. Fraudulence occurred throughout history as well. I have heard a lot of crazy stories of how people made money false claims in order to scam others financially. I do not believe that the older days were better in terms of authenticity and fraud prevention. So buyers be aware. Personally, I try not to pay any attention to it. If I did, I would only end up feeling frustrated. Instead, I chose to only focus on what I can provide to myself and to the community. My goal is to preserve and promote traditional practice to the current and future generations. If I cannot change others, then I will only manage myself. As for your second question, well, I do know a bit of Xiangqi. By the way, let me quickly introduce Xiangqi in case you have never heard of it before. Xiangqi is the Mandarin term for Chinese chess, a very popular game in the pre-internet days. Now, more and more people prefer being online instead of playing Xiangqi as it requires a lot of mental power. Mentally speaking, it is not too different from practicing a traditional martial art. Many people avoid it simply because it is too hard for them. My father was an expert Xiangqi player, but he did not allow me to do it since, in his opinion, it was not worthwhile. He must have spent a lot of time to master it. That's why I guess he did not want his son to practice this. There were a few other questions that I could not get to this time, but I will answer them in the future. So that's the end of this month's Q&A. Thank you for watching. See you next time and enjoy your practice.